All right, and we're officially live. Running behind, planning to get all of our slides together, everybody. That's all my fault. So just a couple minutes late. I'm slightly irresponsible. Mark, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks, Eric. Thank you.
All right. Now, things keep shifting around as we go. We were not planning to do our third part of the CIA series. We were actually going to be covering RFK, but we want to be a little bit closer to RFK on Sidebar. And there's some exciting developments with Mark and Sirhan coming up. And so we will be literally covering that. And I hope you guys like Mark. You're going to be seeing a lot of him over the next couple months because there's just so many moving parts that are almost shocking. I would have never imagined even being tangentially connected to some crazy history here. So I found a Forrest Gump, as Mark self-describes himself, and I'm just, like hitching my wagon and just saying, hey, following along. So today we are finishing out our CIA trilogy. I feel like it almost is a trilogy. We have CIA in the movies, we have CIA in the news, and then we have CIA, or family of the CIA. Now, a lot of it was originally children, but there's more than children. There's cousins, there's fathers. So it's like, no, you know what? This is just family.
Right.
And, a nice spooky family. And there may be more later. I don't know. They seem to keep on working. I have other guests coming up who are going to fill in other stories. I don't know. It's crazy enough somebody can make a career just doing a CIA conspiracy.
It's hard to keep up with.
It really is.
I mean, they're producing new children all the time, so it's hard to keep up.
Well, yeah, there is that. There is that. So we've got actually a lot of slides. I mean, slides, but a lot of pictures. We like using the pictures because it's cool to have Mark talk about stuff, but it's a lot better if you're like, okay, oh, that guy. Oh, okay, that guy. Even though you don't know who that guy is, still put a face to the name, talk about who they are. And got a lot to go. So let's just get right to it. And
let's roll.
First candidate is, I think, a network executive.
He was a network executive. I think he's independent now. That's Michael Cassio from, at the time, Nat Geo, National Geographic. National Geographic, of course, goes back to the magazine days when they used their photographers to infiltrate countries behind the Iron Curtain. They were one of the first magazines the CIA used to infiltrate, simply because people didn't bother to check, about Nat Geo, National Geographic. So
did they do Doctors Without Borders too, and some of the other charity organizations?
I don't think so. I think that was years later, and those are infiltrated separately as well. But the magazine itself, which became the television network, the National Geographic Channel, he was executive vice president, and he's an independent producer. He was executive in charge of production, and most of the productions he was in charge of were the JFK assassination productions. He was the gatekeeper of JFK, The Final Hours, which was hosted by Bill Paxton, CIA Confidential, The Secret Service Files, all Killing Kennedy, the docudrama starring Rob Lowe, which was on Nat Geo.
Wow.
Yeah, Cassio was executive in charge of that. Now, recently, he has also done, if you remember the biography series, Eric, with Bill Curtis, and they had biographies of everybody, every single person.
Great series.
A fantastic series. It went on from like 1987 to 2001. He was the executive and gatekeeper of that series. So anything you saw about a biography, from Stalin to Cassius Clay, he was the gatekeeper and provided the information to the American public of how much information you were going to get on any American or foreign figure, for that matter, because that's how influential biography was. Recently did a movie called Stars and Strife, documentary about anger in America, some anti-Trump thing. But the kicker is that Cassio's parents, both of them, Blanche and Morris, worked for the CIA, which is the point of our episode, that he's descendant of two CIA parents is how he got his gig. And the children of the CIA usually end up, as I pointed out to you, working in media in some capacity. And that could be television, film, radio, books, which is what we're going to go into today. And by doing that, they become the gatekeepers of American culture, which is why these people are there. And whether Cassio is officially a CIA employee or simply a media asset, it's not really relevant. As we looked at a couple of weeks ago, you know, the fact that Anderson Cooper and Buck Sexton and all these people who work in the news is just as good. It doesn't matter if they're ex-CIA or not. All their friends call them up and they say, what's going on? So this guy, Michael Cassio, recently wrote a children's book called When I Was a Child, I Was Always Afraid. So I thought to myself, of course you were. Your parents were two CIA agents. And it's like it's children's book for a 4-year-old. So I got to get a copy of this, some illustrated book that he wrote. And look, I mean, he also did investigative reports, The Day the World Changed, which was a 9/11 documentary he did after 2021. You know, this guy's branched out, but I know him from doing the Kennedy assassination stuff on Nat Geo and going up to Nat Geo and trying to pitch a project to them and having one executive show up while everybody was on a secret speakerphone in the middle of the table listening into our pitch about Oswald, which I thought was bizarre. So that's Michael Cassio, one of the children of cable television for you.
Somebody in the chat, this is an interesting question. Was Anthony Bourdain part of the CIA?
I believe he was. Anyone who travels the world like that and has dinner with Obama in Vietnam, I presume, is a CIA media asset. I believe Bourdain probably was.
Wow. Okay. So Rick Steve, CIA. No, just
yeah. And don't forget, Leon Panetta had the episode where the chefs came into CIA headquarters and prepared meals for the heads of the CIA in that chef series we covered a couple of weeks ago. So there's something about food and international food which allows them entree probably into foreign restaurants, you know.
Well, I've had on interrogators, and he was talking about that. That's your inroad in interrogation with people. So not even about. It's like food is something that crosses all cultures.
Right, right.
So you can say, hey, let's have dinner, let's eat, and especially a lot of the countries that we're struggling with tend to be very hospitable cultures.
Right. Well, that's why I said that National Geographic magazine, like its descendant Vice magazine years later, was able to cross international borders to take photographs of indigenous cultures. And that was used to, you know, get into these cultures through the back door.
Cooking Institute of America. Cute.
Yeah. Well, the Culinary Institute of America, which is in Poughkeepsie, New York, is called the CIA, by the way.
Oh, I know. But it is still funny.
Right.
All right. So on to number 2.
Okay. So this is, I believe, Carrie Antholos, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So Carrie Antholos is one of the gatekeepers at HBO. He I don't even know how to describe this, but him and his brother, he has a brother who's also, that's his brother. The two of them are of Greek descent. And the CIA was heavily involved. That's William Antholos, by the way. He was head of an organization called the Brookings Institute, which people have called the conscience of the CIA. That's their nickname. So,
or the brain of it.
The brain. I've heard conscience. You know, he's now at the Miller Center in Virginia, running the presidential library. I guess Larry Sabato was running. He must have quit or something, but he's still linked to the Brookings Institute. When Oliver Stone and I went to HBO to pitch my Oswald miniseries, there were about 35 people there. And this gentleman, Carrie Antholos, was examining every document I presented on the table as if he was Colonel Klink in Hogan's Heroes. He was lifting them up and looking at them almost with a monocle to see if they were real documents. And as this was going on in the background, this guy is examining every document as a gatekeeper, which I think he was for HBO for many years in terms of intelligence and, documents and things of that nature. To get into an HBO production, you had to get past him. And unfortunately, we didn't get past him. So the production never happened at HBO. But I just remember him asking me every once in a blue moon during the pitch, which took about 2 hours with Oliver, just the most intrinsically bizarre questions. And then I would answer them and get back to the pitch. Like, he was there for one reason only, Eric. And that was to ask specific questions about what we knew about Oswald. And he seemed to have another agenda, is all I'm saying.
Interesting that Vice was on HBO for a while too, wasn't it?
Well, not a coincidence.
I don't know. I'm just trying to throw out weird observations here.
Right. Very good observation.
To a publisher here.
Okay, so this guy, Chris Milligan, his father was CIA. He owns and operates. This is a compilation book that he wrote. He is the publisher and owner of a company called Trine Day Publishing out of the Northwest. I think it's up in Portland or Seattle. And they specialize in fringe conspiracy books. Here's a picture of him. He has somehow infiltrated into the conspiracy world. You'll find him on JFK assassination websites. And he's a guy that they have used to go behind enemy lines, in my opinion, to see what's on the other side of the conspiracy world with his books. He's not writing the books. He's merely distributing them and publishing them. But he's been around for a while, and his father, it's Portland, Oregon. Yeah, his father.
Controlled opposition, or what do they call that? Controlled opposition, or there's a term.
Right. I don't know. I agree. I don't know the term, but he published a book by St. John Hunt, who was E. Howard Hunt's son, The Bond of Secrecy. He's published a book called The Octopus. And his father was a station chief for the CIA. But I don't think it's so much the books he publishes as the fact that he's a gatekeeper into the world of publishing, which is an old school way that CIA was involved in media back in the old days. He's not a major player, but in the 1960s, he would have been.
And was that kind of like a honeypot type of situation? Like, one way you can figure out what's out there or what could be out there is, hey, you back a publisher.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
Your publisher specializes in this kind of book, and then you get
it's
people.
Spiderweb, Eric. Yeah, whatever's coming down the pike, he's going to be the first to see it, whether he agrees to publish your work or not. At least they're privy to what's going on in that area. I mean, it's a brilliant idea to have somebody, who's a gatekeeper of fringe publishing. I mean, genius. You're going to get to see the manuscripts before anybody else does. And thereby publish them or not publish them, but you'll know what's going on.
And I'm thinking it's also a pretty good investment in terms of cheap. I mean,
totally
no writer is going to expect to earn anything more than serial money.
I know. I know people who have had their books published by Trine Day, and there's not much money there. Absolutely, it's not an expensive venture.
So very, very interesting.
Yeah, Milligan.
All right. So next up, we have.
Oh, this guy. Yeah, this guy has really, since I wrote this, is really advanced. He came out of nowhere as a pro-nuclear lobbyist, saying we have to go back to nuclear power, and that was about 5 years ago. Michael Schellenberger, and now he has moved into other areas of the environment. His father's name was Shelley Schellenberger, who was a CIA operative. And
Best I can do on that.
That's his father. Yeah, that's his father. Is now retired. But
and hard to find pictures. Some of these people are. It is tough to track down the pictures.
Yeah, that took me a while to find his dad. That I didn't. I knew something didn't smell right about this guy. He seemed to come out of nowhere, and he was featured in a CNN pro-nuke film called Pandora's Promise. He was anti-nuke and then became pro-nuke. And I thought, that's kind of weird. What's the deal with this guy? And apparently some portion of the intelligence community wants us to use nuclear power again. I don't know what their agenda is, and who knows, what their agenda is. But this guy, he came out of nowhere with being a pro-nuke guy, which I thought was odd, this late stage. So
there are a lot of good arguments for nuke.
Oh, yeah, no,
in terms of great energy. So it is a weird one. It's interesting.
It's totally nuke.
I think both founders of Greenpeace have separated with the organization by this point. I know one of them is like almost a full-blown conservative, rabid, quote, right winger, very, very opposite of the Greenpeace message. And then the other one is splintered out. He hates the first guy, but I don't know. I think all these groups fall apart in their own weird way. So.
Well, a lot of them are infiltrated. So I don't know where this guy Schellenberger is coming from. I don't know what his agenda is, but somehow they seem to drop out of the sky right into cable news. Like they just come out of nowhere, fully formed individuals coming out of some fully formed think tank that has fully formed policies that you've never heard of. And he's an expert. The guy's another expert. So now he's on all the time as an expert. That's their job, is to get these guys in as experts, and get their.
But when you have Anderson Cooper there, you can get on the air, right? I mean,
he's on Tucker a lot. This guy, Schellenberger, I've seen him. He's been on Tucker quite a bit. So he's now moved over to the other side. He started there, but now he's over here. So who knows where this guy's going?
Crazy. All right. Now that was, we're shifting. Now, one thing you did is you kind of organized this. I guess I should have said those are environmental children, or right. He was a child of the environmentalist movement.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy for me to say today, obviously. Mm-hmm. So now we're moving into music and art, which is.
This is going to branch over to a couple of other things here, because this covers a lot of terrain. This is a broad one. We could actually bring in that Oswald stuff here if we like, because this.
Oh, yeah, because he ties as well.
Right. This actually ties into Oswald. It's kind of interesting. There was a guy, just so you know, there was a guy named Robert. Well, this is his son. This is Michael Fritz of Fritz and the Tantrums. But there's a guy named Michael. This is Michael Fitz. There was a guy named Robert Fitzpatrick, who was his dad. This cat, right? This guy, Michael Fitzpatrick, is the guy I want to talk about for 2 seconds, because he.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this guy went to a school called Spring Hill, and Spring Hill is a private Jesuit college in Mobile, Alabama. And the reason he's of importance is he went to school with Eugene Muret. Eugene Muret is Lee Harvey Oswald's first cousin. And Eugene Muret invited his first...
Mural.
Muret.
Okay.
Muret, M-U-R-R-E-T. The Muret family is Oswald's mother's sister, Lillian Muret, who basically raised Oswald in New Orleans. And the Muret family, Eugene Muret, going to Spring Hill College, this Jesuit college in Mobile, Alabama, invited Lee Harvey Oswald to be the guest speaker. That's his mother, Lillian, a number of years later. That's she's the sister. No, that's Marilyn. I'm sorry, it's years later. That's the first cousin of Lee Harvey Oswald. But if you could go back, okay. So this is. Hold on. This is
Eugene. Talking about Eugene.
This is Eugene. Okay. Let's just focus on Eugene for 5 seconds. Eugene Muret goes to Spring Hill College, and in that college, he invites Lee Harvey Oswald to speak on what it's like in the Soviet Union after he came back. So not a lot of lone nut assassins get to speak at colleges about their experience in the Soviet Union. But Lee Harvey Oswald was the guest speaker, invited by his first cousin, Eugene Muret, to speak at Spring Hill College in Mobile, Alabama. Now, one of the students there is this guy, Robert Fitzpatrick. So because it's a men's Jesuit college, Robert Fitzpatrick is assigned the task of dealing with Marina Oswald, who's sitting outside the lecture hall, and he comes out and, for reasons that nobody knows, speaks Russian and becomes Marina Oswald's pen pal and becomes kind of a handler for Marina Oswald at that time. He walks around the college with her, befriends her,
Yeah,
gives
he
her.
said he wanted to practice his Russian, and that's
Right, he
why
wanted to practice his Russian, and everybody's speaking Russian. It's amazing how many cats are speaking Russian back then. So anyway, he becomes after he leaves Spring Hill College, he becomes the youngest city councilman in the history of Baltimore, Maryland. He then becomes the head of Johns Hopkins Medical School. He then becomes the head of Euro Disney. He then becomes the head of Cal Arts in California. He then becomes the head of Chicago Institute of Art, which is where I think this photo is taken. He then comes out as gay, even though he's got a wife and 2 kids, and he's Canadian years later. He is a spook that they graduate into the art world. And the reason he's important is he allows them to infiltrate into the art world, which is where they've had problems penetrating. But through cats like Robert Fitzpatrick, they were able to infiltrate into the fine arts world. And he infiltrated into Baltimore city politics. I don't know if he ran into Pelosi's father, who was the mayor at the time, but he was the youngest city councilman in Baltimore history. What he has to do with Baltimore, the guy's not even an American. He was given an American citizenship when he graduated from Jesuit college because of his work with Marina Oswald. He was given an honorary American citizenship or some sort of citizenship to allow him to become the city councilman of Baltimore and the head
that's interesting. So he got his citizenship by working with an assassin's wife.
Right, who was a Russian KGB, who was a Russian KGB colonel's daughter. So that's how he.
Interesting way to gain that citizenship. And you brought up a point a minute ago, going all the way back with Marina.
By the way, nobody knows any of this, Eric. What we're talking about here, this is all breaking news. That nobody knows any of this stuff about these guys.
Wow, that's fascinating because you're talking about him lecturing at the school, and I did find stuff about Lee Harvey Oswald appearing there and lecturing. There's so much more about Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, truthfully,
I'll put it this
everything
way.
I've known is he was just a weird,
a week before Oswald speaks there, Joan Baez performs there in the same stage, right? So, and 2 weeks after Oswald's done, a businessman from New Orleans speaks there, and his name is Clay Shaw. Now, the odds of that happening are 1,000,000,000 to 1, but Clay Shaw, who is put on trial by Jim Garrison after the assassination of being one of the only conspirator ever charged with the murder of the president, speaks at the same Jesuit college as Lee Harvey Oswald, booked by Oswald's cousin. Now, getting back to Eugene Muret, which is what I wanted to tell you about, which is really unusual, is Eugene Muret ends up being what's called the I'm trying to remember the exact phraseology of it. He becomes the head of the Bosnian judicial system after the Bosnian War. He's brought in as a judge to reshape.
He's like a Supreme Court justice almost.
Right, but of Bosnia. This is after the Bosnian War. He's brought in as the supreme whatever of the judicial system to make their judicial system more like ours, Eric. So from bringing, here he is. It's called the Judicial Administrator of Bosnia. That was his title, Judicial Administrator of Bosnia. And he worked for an organization called the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is USAID, which, as we all know, is a CIA front organization. So that was his payoff, was to go all the way back. He was also in the district attorney's office of New Orleans. A lot of these Jesuits, as you may or may not be aware in your audience, Jesuits are directly linked to the CIA over the years. You know, they're able, or the original idea was that they were able to penetrate borders, promoting Jesuit Catholic beliefs. Same thing as Nat Geo, but from a religious angle. So Eugene Muret is the brother of Marilyn Muret. And if you get back to that other picture, I'll explain Marilyn Muret because she's really interesting. Marilyn, who is his sister, is the Barack Obama's mother of her era. This is Marilyn. And if you show the other picture, you'll see a much younger version of her. with the three of them in New Orleans. Yeah, that's her on the left. That's Lillian, who is Oswald's mother's sister, Marguerite Oswald's sister, Lillian, who was a surrogate mother, and that's Lee Harvey Oswald there. This 1959 in New Orleans. So Marilyn on the left, who testified extensively before the Warren Commission, was a teacher, quote unquote, who went around the world teaching students English all over the world, had no source of income, had no other income other than being a teacher. And that was a cover that was used by the CIA for women for many years to be able to travel the world and infiltrate into private schools and worked out of embassies, non-official cover situations. The same cover that was used by Anne Dunham years later, which we'll get to, Obama's mother. She used the same thing as an anthropologist. It's an old technique used by the agency to get women into different institutions using the teaching cover. So at one point, interestingly enough, while Oswald is in Moscow, he runs into his cousin. He runs into Marilyn Muret in Moscow, interestingly enough. She goes, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm defecting. What are you doing here?"
Insane. Okay, so now
I think the point is that as you said, there's more to Oswald than meets the eye. But the theme of our show is that this runs in families, and this is
here's another family.
What's that?
And I think this family's tied to it as well, right?
Okay,
Ruth and Michael Payne.
Right. This is Ruth and Michael Payne. Now, Michael Payne had a top security clearance for Bell Helicopter out of Texas, and goes back to the Payne, of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that's
Thomas Payne. Wow.
Yeah, he's a descendant of Thomas Payne, which is indicative of what I'm trying to explain. They like to work in families, even if the families are 200 years old. I mean, he's a descendant.
Even better.
Right, it's even better. They could vouch for him. He marries Ruth Payne, who's a Quaker, and Ruth Payne, of course, speaks perfect Russian, and gets involved.
Doesn't everybody?
Everybody does speaks perfect Russian. That's, I think, who knows where they're coming out of in this photo, but
that's the Warren Commission.
Right, that's what I thought. Ruth and Michael Payne become the handlers of Oswald when he comes to Dallas. She gets him the job at the Texas School Book Depository. Michael Payne, like I said, works with Bell Helicopter. He's got a security clearance working down there. She becomes the lesbian lover of Oswald's wife, Marina Oswald, and demands that the love letters that they wrote be given back to her from the Warren Commission. She eventually gets them back. When the Dallas police raid her garage, they take all of her lesbian films, which she's very unhappy about, and demands that her films be returned. It really drove her crazy, was the taking of her lesbian films. But the love letters, it was part of her handling of Marina Oswald was to befriend her, and not unusual, like a honeypot situation that you described earlier, Eric, where they use sexuality to entrap or to involve themselves with the person they're working with.
Well, the Russians did that a lot too. I mean, that was one of their main MO. So, we learn from each other, I'm sure. And this is their son to put us back on.
Right. This is their son, Chris Payne, who actually lives across the street from where I'm broadcasting from. And he wrote, he actually lives right over there. I could see his building right from here. And he created a movie called Who Killed the Electric Car, which had all kinds of political ramifications to it, a documentary, which had, a lot of fossil fuel stuff in there and a lot of different political angles to it. So he doesn't brag about his parents at all, but he is the son of Chris and Michael and Ruth Payne. Now, Ruth Payne, you say, well, how could she possibly be in the CIA? She, after she was done with the Kennedy thing, she ends up in the 80s in Nicaragua. And the Sandinista supporters who were Americans who were down there supporting Danny Ortega realized that she is a spook and physically escort her.
I thought it was a Contras. I thought Ortega was a Contras.
What did I say?
You said Sandinistas.
Interesting, right? Okay,
We
well,
back to Contras with the CIA. I know that well because this is rolling into my guest on Monday.
right. Okay,
We'll
fine.
reveal the drug channels
Right.
of that.
Well,
William Devine,
the point of the matter is she gets outed, and the American
Levine.
supporters escort her to the border of the nation, kicking her out. So she didn't retire after the Kennedy affair. She got involved in, I think, the Contras and the Sandinistas and whatever the hell was going on down there, to show that Ortega was a Sandinista. That's what I thought. Right.
Okay.
Anyway, I only bring it up because it showed that others outed her as a spook as well. And she's still alive. The husband's still alive. These people never pass away. The husband is up in, I think, in Seattle somewhere up in there, and I don't know where she is, but he's right across the street.
And you're right. I forgot. We did prop the Sandinistas before we propped the Contras up. So I should remember that. Same way that we propped up Saddam Hussein before he was no longer worthy of supporting. So sorry, my mistake.
No, it's okay. I was just trying to make a separate point. The Paynes, you could see that they have a son involved in political documentary filmmaking, and a lot of the funding for these things come, like I show with Frank Gibney, which we could get to now if you want to go into the Gibney family a little bit.
Oh yeah. What? Wow. Oh my God! It's a coincidence.
That's Alex Gibney. Okay, so that's Alex. He's the son of Frank. I don't know if you have a picture of Frank, but
I have a picture of Frank.
There's Frank. Okay, so Frank was a spook media asset for Newsweek and Life magazine, and
like these guys.
Oh, that's very good. There he is. That's right. And he gets tired of it. He wants out. He writes a famous letter, a secret letter to Alan Dulles saying, "I can't take it anymore." There's a copy of the letter I got somehow. He writes a letter saying his conscience is bothering him. He really can't take it anymore. Not many people write a letter to Alan Dulles saying, I can't work with you anymore, on the letterhead of Life magazine, indicating that he works for the CIA. So Dulles writes back, yeah. You see
there's
on
the Life
Life
letterhead
magazine there. Yeah, I got that letter a number of years ago. Part of my collection, and the response I got separately, a little bit redacted, but not bad, from a guy named Alan Dulles, director of the CIA, to Frank Gibney, right at the time in Life, Rockefeller Center, saying, I will meet with you and talk about these issues. He's not going to write anything in a letter, Dulles, but he does say, we'll discuss this when we meet. And Frank Gibney is trying to get out of it. He's obviously had it, with being an informant and a media asset. And one of the things he had to do was write the Penkovsky Papers, which is this book here, about a Soviet spy who was caught and killed in the Soviet Union, a general named Oleg Penkovsky. And the book is based on Penkovsky's memoir, but it has no author. The editor is Frank Gibney, as it says on the book. And it is a CIA-produced product that, came out in the 60s, but would be more relevant by Chris Milligan, rather, if Trine Day was back in the 1960s. Back in those days,
Chase Brandon. Then essentially, he was a
Chase Brandon of books, right, which was the only way that they operated then in media, was magazines and books. So Frank Gibney has two sons. One of them, not so much as Alex Gibney. Alex Gibney moves into documentaries. There's Alex there. And Alex makes a documentary about Julian Assange. He's
a lot of work for HBO, by the way.
Right, HBO is one of the operatives, and also Universal Studios has traditionally been a funnel for intelligence money to go towards Hollywood directors and Hollywood artists for different spook projects. From what I understand, the CIA funneled $2 million through Universal. They contacted Alex Gibney about doing a hatchet job on Julian Assange. which he quickly agreed to do, which became the documentary We Sell Secrets, I think it was. What was the name of the documentary?
I think that's right. Let me see. Yeah, We Steal Secrets.
We Steal Secrets, right? Which was a hatchet job on Assange. His brother.
He also did the Scientology stuff. To his credit, he definitely.
Well, they're all to his credit. I mean, it's not to his credit. It's what they want to make, Eric. It's nothing to do with credit. Someone said to me the other day, I like Alex Gibney's work. And I said, of course. Why would they take somebody whose work sucks? I mean, it's a ridiculous statement. You know, I hate Alex Gibney's work. It sucks. The CIA should get a better guy. You know, of course the stuff's good. I mean, if they gave me $2 million for Universal, I think I could make a pretty good documentary about Popeye the Sailor. You know, I mean, come on. Anyway, so
CIA, we don't hire hacks.
We don't hire hacks. That should be their new motto. You know, I think that's what Hannity's CIA pin says in tiny letters, like in Latin. It says we don't hire
He didn't get the memo,
right?
But he didn't get the memo. Sorry.
That's funny. Anyway, he's got a brother named James Gibney, who was deputy editor of the New York Times and executive editor of Foreign Policy magazine. Became a speechwriter. That's his brother, right? That's James Gibney. He became a speechwriter for Bill Clinton, national security advisor, worked with Warren Christopher. He writes editorials for Bloomberg News right now. That's where he is. So he's working with Michael Bloomberg, and I assume involved with China somehow, since Bloomberg is so. Oh yeah, in fact he wrote. He wrote. Did bombing Hiroshima save lives? And he also wrote CIA torture made Latin America safe for China. And he wrote another op-ed called Dennis Rodman's visit to North Korea is worth 3 points. So he's earning his keep.
All right. And are they related to the actress Susan Gibney, or is that just?
And I don't know. I don't know who she is. I do know they're indirectly related to William Sloane Coffin, the famous anti-war minister from Manhattan, from Upper Manhattan and the church up there. William Sloane Coffin was a famous anti-war activist. He became the stepfather to, he got arrested every single week. Cathedral St. John the Divine. I'm sorry, that escaped me for a second. He was a pastor for Cathedral St. John the Divine, was a left-wing, supposedly, left-wing communist pastor who was arrested in all these anti-war operations. Turns out that the Reverend,
looks like it's with MLK, or maybe I'm wrong. It's Montgomery, Alabama. So
right, probably he was part of the civil rights movement and got arrested many times. The oddity was that he was a CIA operative, and he was the stepfather to Alex Gibney. I guess his mother.
Wait a minute. So you're saying that a CIA operative may have been involved with civil rights movement activity and marches and infiltrating organizations? Not possible. I mean, we don't have anything like that going on. No FBI infiltration, no CIA. Mark, what languages is he were speaking?
Well, one of my favorite infiltrators was Gloria Steinem, who worked closely with the CIA, was a CIA media asset, now been outed. Also, George Plimpton, who ran the Paris Review, outed as a CIA media asset. The Paris Review funded.
Didn't Steinem work directly with Rockefeller?
Who's that?
Nelson Rockefeller. Didn't she work directly with Nelson Rockefeller about changing the narrative on the women's movement? There's some conspiracy stuff about that too, that the whole idea of saying, women have to leave the house, they have to get to work and all that was so they could double consumerism overnight.
It could be. I'm just saying that Gloria Steinem was a CIA media asset that's been revealed a number of years ago, as was George Plimpton, who happens to end up in the kitchen banging the gun out of Sirhan's hand onto the steam table after firing 6 shots into different people, which we can get to at a later date when we cover the Sirhan thing. George Plimpton seems to be everywhere.
All roads lead to a Kennedy, don't they?
Yeah, eventually they do. I mean, now Bobby the Third is married to a CIA operative, so they're going to produce little extra shows for us at some point.
Good Lord.
RFK Jr.'s son, RFK III married a
Wow.
CIA agent recently, about 2 years ago.
Well, good. I'm
It's all good. It's all good. So
Pretty-
William Sloane Coffin, also CIA. We did Chris Payne, who killed the electric car, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
We
did-
circled around that through Oswald.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to finish up with Oswald. Did I cover the Murets? We did Lillian.
Yep. We did.
Marilyn. We did Eugene Muret. Yeah, it is just odd that the assassin, the lone nut assassin.
Again, all roads lead to. I mean, like I did not realize that. Look, the only thing I knew is the representation that he was just this crazy nut job who managed to get himself a job at the depository, that he was like, I don't know, the equivalent of a stock boy or a grocery store bagger. I mean, honestly, there's like, and it's like, wait, there's so much more to this guy. And then, oh no, he's connected. Oh, and this is going on. Oh, and this is
There's reasons there's 500, 600 books on the subject. It's not because 600 people decided to make up crap. I mean, there's so much material. It took 600 to 700 books to deal with it, Eric. You know what I mean? And number of movies and documentaries.
right, but it keeps spawning to even worse, because then we go to Bugliosi,
right,
who wrote The Authoritative, and then there's the ties with, what else is he known for? He was mostly known for Manson, and then I had Tom O'Neill on, and Manson could be tied directly to the CIA.
Everything's tied together. These are not independent things. And we used to be called, when I was growing up, we were called conspiracy theorists. But now, when people like Tom O'Neill, what's that? Now we're historians. now we're famed historians. But originally, we were tinfoil hat conspiracy nuts. I mean, like we pointed out, I mean, that came up from Rush to Judgment, the 1967, 64 book by Mark Lane that hit the #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and the CIA wanted to smear him by calling him a new term called a conspiracy theorist. That was created exclusively for Mark Lane, exclusively for the book Rush to Judgment, which was the #1 bestseller in the nation when it came out, debunking the Warren Commission, one of the first books ever.
Wow. And it's so funny because and I'm leading into the 80s and 90s, where we have Gary Webb, Two to the Head.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be tying that stuff together. And, you're talking about these publishers that are out there debunking, right? Well, there's this Montel Williams thing that has William Levine on it with Gary Webb. And they're talking to
Michael Levine or William Levine?
I'm sorry. It's
William Levine. Michael. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I get it. I don't know why. Levine throws me off. I apologize. Right. It is Michael Levine.
I only know that because I used to go as a kid to Levine's bungalow colony in the Catskills, so that's why I'm an expert on this.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
I was Philip Levine.
Well, and he is how does he put it? He's a Jew that played Italian, Puerto Ricans. Like the whole spread.
Undercover.
Yeah, he did all of that, and he is out of New York City area. But anyway, he's there, and then there's a couple people there, which is like I forget the name of the guy who's head of accuracy in media, AIM.
I was just looking at something they wrote. What are they talking about with them?
Oh, well, because he was obviously full of it, that there was no CIA involvement with drugs in Nicaragua, and there were committees on that, and the Kerry Commission, that never happened. And it's just blowing my mind, because then we have the Church Commission that unraveled MK Ultra, and the reason Church got involved with MK Ultra is because his crap was leaked out by the NSA. He found out they were spying on him. It pissed him off.
Right. And now he was kind of a Tucker of his day, but he was
bingo. That's what I was going to say. And now we have Tucker.
Tucker, the same thing.
Who was also the lead into a CIA pin, by the way.
Right. Well, Tucker's up in Montana at the fly fishing thing, and the guy confronts him with a videographer. He just happens to be wandering through the woods with a cameraman, and confronts Tucker last week. Screaming at him. It turns out that guy was linked to the CIA. The guy who, he was outed within 12 hours.
Oh my God.
The guy who confronted Tucker was a CIA operative.
Okay, so you know what? To get back to the story and get less scary,
Right.
Let's talk about that fine family that we all want to discuss, and
Which
definitely want to get
family is
this one.
that? I mean, they've got you're talking about
This family, this
the the
beautiful family here.
the Dunham,
Yeah,
Soterra, Obama family. I mean, there's a lot of names. On the left, you'll see Ann Dunham, and Ann Dunham is wearing a blazer. On the right shoulder are the initials to a Jesuit Catholic school in I'm swear to God,
it is.
swear to God, are the initials for a Jesuit private school in Beirut, Lebanon, where this photo is taken, because the man in the middle is her father, the grandfather to Barack Obama, who was a CIA operative at the Beirut station where this is taken, with the grandmother of Barack Obama sitting next to him.
And by the way, this was in the time that Beirut was considered the Paris of the Middle East, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. The woman on the right, Madeline Dunham, will end up running the escrow account out of the Bank of Hawaii and Honolulu that the CIA used as a private slush fund for dictators like Marcos in the Philippines and Sukarno in Indonesia and Hussein in a place called Iraq. She will handle privately that money being funneled through that bank. The woman on the left will become the Marilyn Muret of the 60s and 70s, Ann Dunham. She will, just so you know, apparently they used a lot of anthropologists. Anthropologists later became the go-to profession for the intelligence agencies
How
because
about
they were
archaeologists?
archaeologists too. In fact, one of the teachers that Obama had at the private school in Hawaii was the model for Indiana Jones, one of his teachers at the school. So, I mean, when Indiana Jones is your teacher, I mean, I guess anything's possible, you know.
Well, there you go. And Indiana Jones, of course, was what? He was anti-Nazi. And what was the CIA built for? It was because of, oh my God.
Right, right. So
It's a
anyway,
loop. It's like an OODA loop for
right. So
anybody who wants to study the market.
Ann Dunham becomes involved in these sham marriages, first to Operation Air Africa, it was called. They brought over 282 Africans from various nations because we wanted to have the future leaders of Africa during the Cold War when we were battling the Soviets in Africa. So from Kenya comes Barack Sr., who comes to the university in Hawaii and an organization called the East-West Foundation, which was a CIA front at the University in Hawaii, where her and Barack Sr. are, of course, studying Russian together, as many innocent people do.
Well, you've established that.
Right. So the two of them meet. The two of them meet studying Russian, which is where every lovebird meets. You know, we always meet your
Of course.
They're at the East-West Institute at the University of Hawaii. So, by the way, Hawaii is just, from what my recent research indicates, is completely Spooksville. I mean, everything involved, the more I dig into Hawaii, the more it seems like it's a complete CIA state. Mark David Chapman coming out of there, a lot of MK Ultra stuff coming out of Hawaii. Apparently, they've been doing stuff in Hawaii for years that you and I are not privy to. But Dunham meets.
What kind of makes sense, though, doesn't it? I mean, again,
it does now, yeah.
You're going to say the CIA is all out of World War II. I mean, Hawaii is out of World War II, and
yeah, Pearl Harbor starts World War II. I mean, in Hawaii, the beginning, yeah. So anyway, so here's little. That's, I guess, the grandmother on the right and his mother on the left, and little Barack in the middle. So Barack Sr. comes from Kenya, leaves a wife who's pregnant at the time, comes to Hawaii and marries this woman and impregnates her with Barack. He then goes to Harvard, hooks up with a Jewish woman, marries her also, and takes her back to Kenya. So that's like, he's got 3 wives in 2 years simultaneously.
So is he a bigamist, or did he manage to divorce him?
There's some overlapping things here. I don't know what happened to the one in Kenya. The one in Harvard goes back to him. He's kind of, he's kind of kicked out of Harvard because the parents begin to write to the dean of Harvard that this guy is having sex with their daughters and impregnating them. The parents, not connected, separate parents, write to the dean of, he's a player, and they write to the dean saying, this guy is impregnating our daughters. So he's unceremoniously, quietly sent back to Kenya, and he takes one of the students with him as yet his third wife back there. And Barack Sr. was the underling to a guy named Maboya. And Maboya was the next in line to become the head of Kenya. And they were, Tom Maboya was the one who arranged the airlift of Barack Sr. to come to the University of Hawaii. Maboya was part of the same tribe as Barack Obama Sr. Maboya is assassinated, and then there's an assassination attempt on Barack Sr. in Kenya. He later dies in a drunken car crash into a rubber tree himself, becomes an alcoholic and drives himself into a tree. But the operation that the CIA put together was to battle the Soviets throughout Africa. That was why they brought over 280 African students. It wasn't because they liked them. It was, these are going to be the future leaders of Africa, you know, which is what the airlift was about. It was funded by the Joseph P. Kennedy Foundation, by the way, kind of all roads lead to Kennedy oddity number 71. So he supplies the money. They bring him over there. Barack Sr. goes back. Now, Ann Dunham goes back to the East-West Institute. Wait, we got to go. All right, so he's born. He's born. She now, I don't even know how to explain this except to tell you, she meets a guy named Lolo Sotero at the East-West Institute in Hawaii. She goes.
See, the chat was ahead of you. There you go.
Barry Sotero, yeah. So, okay, so Barry Sotero is the stepchild of Lolo Sotero. And you say, well, Mark, who is Lolo Sotero? Lolo Sotero goes to the East-West Institute at the University of Hawaii to learn Russian, like everyone does.
Well, everybody does.
Everybody goes there. So he shows up and
now you'll tell me he's a Jesuit as well.
He's not a Jesuit. He now meets Ann Dunham and, of course, immediately marries her, as things have it. And Lolo Sotero is a colonel to a guy named Suharto, who's a general in Sukarno's military in Indonesia. Sukarno, this is where Sukarno comes in. Sukarno is like the Nasser of Indonesia. He's a nationalist who's playing both sides of the coin. He's the first democratically elected leader of Indonesia. Sukarno is not a strong man. He's a nationalist. He's duly elected. He's trying to find a middle ground to navigate between the Chinese, the communist Chinese, who have infiltrated, not infiltrated, there's millions of Chinese, native Chinese who live in Indonesia, the Soviets who have infiltrated into Indonesia, and us who are in Indonesia. So we are backing Sukarno. Sukarno seems to be slipping away from us. So there's a couple of coups. They're not really well done. Eisenhower fucks up. These coups fail. An American pilot named Pope gets shot down. It's revealed that Pope is CIA. He's shot down. We're bombing some of the outer islands with CIA military planes. So Pope gets caught. We have to pull back the funding, and we realize that we have to take down Sukarno. And the guy that we want to take down Sukarno is a guy named Suharto. Suharto, his number one henchman, is this guy, Lolo Sotero. Where is Lolo Sotero? Lolo Sotero is in Hawaii learning Russian with Ann Dunham. You can't make this up. This is absolutely fact. He now has to go back to Indonesia and help Suharto overthrow Sukarno, which he does, in one of the bloodiest coups in the history of the world. 1.5 million native Chinese are butchered to death in the result of this coup against the communist insurgents and the communist supporters, the PKI, which is a Communist Party of Indonesia. When Suharto takes over with the help of Barry Suharto's stepfather, he is involved in one of the biggest mass murders in the history of any coup, possibly to Pol Pot and the Cambodians. There's estimates that 2.5 million Indonesian Chinese were butchered to death. They're still digging up mass graves in Indonesia to this day. They drove the communist Chinese out of Indonesia, which is what the CIA wanted, with the help of Lolo Soetoro, who was a colonel, and Suharto, who became the bloody strongman of Indonesia. And did our bidding, and that sealed Indonesia into the capitalist U.S. sphere of influence, never to return. The Soviets pulled out. Soviets bailed out when Sukarno was still in power. They saw the handwriting on the wall, but the Chinese were starting to help them build nuclear reactors and supply possibly nuclear weapons to the Indonesian government. So it was a country that was in play at the time. Very rarely is it commented upon because of the debacle. And the reason it's important is Obama, as president, refused to mention Indonesia, didn't want to mention it at all. And a man went village to village with a group. And when Obama was running for president, he went with a group through the villages and threatened them, saying, "Do not talk to the media." And that was a guy named John Brennan, who later became the head of the CIA for Obama.
Charming John.
Yeah. Anyway, so Ann Dunham, this looks like Central Park for some reason. When he was going to Columbia, when he goes to Occidental College in LA, Occidental College is a CIA recruiting college where dozens and dozens of CIA operatives have come out of Occidental here in Los Angeles. He then transfers to Columbia University, which is where I think this looks like Upper Central Park here. If my New York roots indicate that I still remember it, that's his grandmother and grandfather. He takes an intern job at an organization called BIC, which is a CIA front organization in New York, which is called Business International Corporation, when he's at Columbia. And he's an editor of a magazine there for them. And that's a CIA operation to spread international propaganda around the world. And he is part, in the early 80s, of a little-known CIA program called Operation Looking Glass. And Operation Looking Glass is about developing young talent at the college level to become CIA operatives, which he is part of, obviously, based on what we now know.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, there's a lot to this. There's a lot to Operation Looking Glass, which is very rarely explored. But you could see that his road is being paved. Put it that way.
Wow.
He's now taken at the age of 6. He's taken by his mother, Ann Dunham, back to Indonesia, where he's put into a madrasa, and they give him a Indonesian Sabaric last name. So he can become an Indonesian citizen. And I think the whole thing about his birth certificate was not about birther or anything about that. It was about this adoption by Soetoro, this legal adoption of him, which had to happen for him to go to an Indonesian school based on Indonesian law. He had to be adopted. There was no way a foreign national
surfacing these roots. So, okay, so what you're saying is that the whole scheme might not have been to disprove where he was born. It was to force him to show who he's related to.
Exactly. And Soetoro adopted him, and I don't think if this has ever been acknowledged. And on his, they add this name Sabaric as an Indonesian name to show that he is now an Indonesian national who has been given, you can't have dual citizenship according to Indonesian law, even to this day. So he is an American citizen. However, to become a student in the madrasa in Indonesia, he needs to be adopted and given Indonesian citizenship, which is what this name indicated, that Sotero had adopted him as his stepson.
Wow.
So this is now another marriage by his mother. His mother, the reason this is important, and getting back to his mother goes village to village as a quote unquote anthropologist to find out who the communists are in the village so they can be executed. That's where the blood is on the hands of his mother. She's not a hippie chick from Berkeley. She's not a deadhead. She's not anything like that. This woman used her anthropology training, as did Margaret Mead, by the way, by her own admission. She used it to find out in the villages what the political beliefs were of different villages. That's the information the CIA needed so that Suharto could execute his enemies once he seized power with the coup. And those enemies added up to closely 2 million Chinese Indonesians.
Good Lord.
Yeah. She then goes to Pakistan in the 80s and does the same thing when the Soviets start going into Afghanistan. She goes to Lahore and takes Obama with her in 81, I think, and it's the same time the Soviets are invading Afghanistan. So she is everywhere where the action is her entire career, country by country by country. She's everywhere, and she's an operative. That's what she's doing. This is but the dirty politics is using the anthropology to find out the politics of the villagers. That's where the blood is on the hands of the family of Obama. And he refuses to acknowledge any activity about his mother during that time period, other than that she was an anthropologist and, going through these villages, which is far from true. This coup is one of the most underreported American-backed CIA coups in American history, with the highest body count of any coup in American history, the coup in Indonesia, of replacing Sukarno with Suharto. Very rarely discussed.
Wow, that's a lot to chew on. And it's no wonder he could withstand the scorn of the other famous family, the Clintons. I'm guessing that the Clintons' ties are more organized crime, whereas the Obama ties are more CIA ridden.
Interestingly enough, Suharto gave $1 million to the Clinton campaign in 1992 through a backdoor legal campaign contributions to Bill Clinton. So there is some connection to the Clinton administration through Indonesia.
All right. And a question from Viva Fry.
Oh, Viva.
A lot of this information is some that you cannot independently verify. How do you defend yourself against accusations of being a conspiracy theorist?
Well, there's books on the subject. I don't know if I'm a conspiracy theorist or not. I mean, Wayne Madsen has written a wonderful book called The Making of the President, about the history of the Obamas. There's a number of books on these subjects. I mean, I'm not just winging it here. I mean, there's quite a bit of documentary evidence there.
I got to confirm that too. It's shocking to me because I'm like, MK Ultra. I'll keep going to that, and I'm like, no, it's just crazy conspiracy. It's like, no, that was New York Times.
Yeah,
that was actually congressional hearings, and I'm like, how in the world is this not like talked about so much more? They managed to somehow get this weird buzz, like it's this weird conspiracy, odd thing, but it's like you look at it, it's like, no, that was the front page of the New York Times. John Marks was a legitimate reporter, and book after book, and it's like, no, it's all there. And that's, I guess, what is it? If you want to hide history, put it in books?
Yeah, I mean, it's in books. I mean, the books are footnoted. There's plenty of bibliographies. There's plenty of footnotes, plenty of documents, just like Tom O'Neill's book. When you look at Chaos and you see the incredible amount of documents that O'Neill has come up with, I mean, obviously it took him 20 years. It's insane that a guy would dedicate his life to that, but that's what it takes, Eric. I mean, that book's a masterpiece of documentation. If you hadn't read Chaos and a guy like Tom O'Neill came on your show and just started talking about what he'd uncovered, you might say he's a tinfoil conspiracy theorist. But he's got everything documented, everything footnoted. It's a marvelous book. And hopefully they'll make a documentary out of it. Maybe it'll be easier because these documentaries seem to be the Cliff Notes versions of books today. You can't read the book, which is 600 pages, so you'll watch an hour documentary on HBO, I guess. Maybe you'll get the information.
Or several.
Yeah.
Or maybe a bunch of them, which is, great and cool.
Right, but I mean, when you see an Alex Gibney making a hatchet job documentary on Julian Assange, I mean, what is the truth? Is Gibney the truth, or is the truth about Assange? What Glenn Greenwald tells us is the truth about Assange, a guy who was with him. So who should I believe, Alex Gibney or Glenn Greenwald about Julian Assange, a guy who's been locked away in England now with no charges for years? Ostensibly a political prisoner.
True. I'm going to circle back to the Indiana Jones reference. When we're talking about all the material out there, it's voluminous, actually. And if you remember the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they hid the Ark of the Covenant, like giant ass government facility amongst miles of boxes. That's
right.
Kind of what we're looking at here, and why Tom O'Neill has to spend 20 years, because a lot of it is it's sort of being hidden, I think, in plain sight. It's all out there, but it's buried, it's obscure, it's odd. I mean, books have fallen out of print. I mean,
you're showing me to connect. It takes a long time to connect these dots. I mean, Mark Lane was called a nut. He's a conspiracy nut when he first came out with this stuff. Now he looks like the smartest guy in the room for having come up with debunking the magic bullet theory and a lot of the other Kennedy stuff. It's now accepted as fact. They move the goalpost all the time, Eric. They have a thing called the limited hangout. The CIA, where they'll give in that, okay, you got me there, but you don't have me here. They'll throw you a bone saying, yes, we agree that happened. We agree. Now what? Now we got to come up with another theory and move the goalpost.
I think this is why, and I just thought of this right now. This is why it's so critical that they're cracking down on everybody on Twitter, YouTube, and things like that, because the internet does enable everybody to index this material, because a lot of it is a matter of, John Marks writing about MK Ultra had to have a team of researchers going through all the, many thousands of pages to, dig this out. Well, if that's all scanned, OCR'd, and put into databases, you can be running AI inquiries or machine learning inquiries and extrapolating information so much quicker. Plus, you can disseminate it to a lot of people. So maybe, that's part of the strategy of, oh shit,
well,
we got locked
this
down.
Maybe the only strategy, and it's not just part of the strategy, it is the only strategy that they can come up with is out and out censorship. There is no other way to combat it other than removing the stuff from the internet down a rabbit hole. There's no more gatekeepers. Think about the gatekeepers. Think about the guy I just mentioned to you, Chris Milligan at Trine Day Books. Gatekeeper. Who's the gatekeeper of the internet? Nobody. Who's the gatekeeper at CBS News? There's a guy at CBS News whose brother worked for what's his name, Ben Cosgrove or something, who worked for Obama. His brother was the head of CBS News. They have gatekeepers who are tied to the administration. But if you're not getting the news, what's that?
Cheryl Atkinson wrote about it. Ben, I forgot his name, but yeah, his brother is
was at CBS. But if you're not getting your news from CBS anymore, now what do? What do? I mean, there's no gatekeeper, so all you can do is censor it, pull down the video. I mean, it's brute force, but it's better than having you and your friends go through all these documents and talking to people like me all day. Something's got to give. You can't have this go on anymore, Eric.
By the way, Bill Berry, I have been in touch with Larry Sanger, or trying to work it out. Co-founder of Wikipedia.
Oh, I've seen him. Yeah.
He left it. He has something else. So, okay. On that note, everybody, this has been Ben Rhodes. Thank you.
Oh, Ben Rhodes. Thank you.
This has been a fantastic fire hose. I encourage everybody to watch it 6 times. Take notes. Get back to us later. And you know what? Please tell everybody. Not only does it help us get the word out, get the views up, get people here, but hey, let's get eyeballs before they take it down.
Right.
Seriously.
Right. Good point. Next time, Sirhan, Eric.
That's right. Next
Okay.
time is going to be Sirhan, and oh my God, you think this is interesting?
Woo!
We're only getting started.
Right. We're just scratching the surface.